Hey dudes, welcome to Splat from the Past, the only 80s themed horror and sci-fi show where things can get totally radical. Now today, I will be interviewing a very special person. I will be interviewing LeeAnn Kreischer, the wife of stand-up comedian Bert Kreischer. And she has a podcast on YouTube called Wife of the Party. Very deep, meaningful podcast about life and about personal journeys and struggles and what have you. And I'm going to have her on the podcast today. I had to reach out to her. I've been a fan of it for the past 4 or 5 months or so. And I had to reach out to her to talk to her and tell her about my journey as well, because she's very compassionate towards people who have had difficulties in life. And I'm pretty excited. I think it's going to be a very deep and meaningful show today. 2 in one day. I've had 2 deep and meaningful shows today. And it's a pretty good departure occasionally. Doesn't always have to be laughs. So, here is my interview with LeeAnn Kreischer. Hi, LeeAnn.
Yes.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Oh, I am just fabulous. Oh, thank you so much. It's such an honor. Thank you for taking the time today.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Yeah, I've been watching Wife of the Party for about 4 or 5 months now, and I didn't know it existed until one day it came up in a search suggestion on YouTube because I had started watching Bert's podcast. I had listened to it when it was audio only, and I was a little bored thinking, why doesn't he have on camera like a lot of his buddies do? And then I started watching it when he started doing on camera.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then I discovered yours.
Well, that's great.
Yes. I love, how you and your friends get together and start talking about journeys in life and really deep issues and stuff. So I know you've talked a lot about things that have happened in your life and what have you, but what can you tell my audience about the journey of how LeeAnn Kreischer began?
Oh, how my journey began?
Mm-hmm.
Same as everybody else's birth, I guess. I don't know. How my journey began. I think really when...
Hello?
Me, Tommy?
Yeah.
Oh, did I lose you for a second? I'm on a landline too, so hopefully...
Yeah, I lost you for like 2 seconds.
Uh-oh. I wonder what's up, because I made sure I called you from a landline too, so hopefully we wouldn't have any problems. So,
yeah.
Oh well. We'll keep going and see if it still works.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess when I was 4 and my parents started having problems, my mom moved to Chicago to be a model and then just didn't come back for a long time. My dad kind of fell apart a little bit, and I think at that point life changed where I had to go. I started taking care of my dad at 4. So I think my journey to who I am really started there because life took a left turn and just kept kind of not being great until I was in my 20s and started thinking, why am I so unhappy? I'm really unhappy with everything. And then started doing some therapy. Therapy really was what helped me. And reading a lot of books and being really voracious about answering that question, why am I unhappy? And how do I fix that? Because ultimately, the person that can fix your unhappiness is you, nobody else. And being fulfilled in life really does come from you, and not from your mom, your dad, your spouse, your kids. They're part of it, but really it has to come from you and your perspective and how you process the world and what you give to the world, I think. So I don't know. I think in my 20s, I had a lot of tumultuous things happen. A lot of drinking. I was drinking excessively and way too often.
Yeah.
And I was had some bad behaviors. I used to vandalize houses for fun because that's awesome and super healthy. And, I'd have boyfriend after boyfriend after boyfriend that I just fall madly in love with and then immediately out of love with. And if you've listened to my story for the whole time, I had a date rape in college, which was really difficult. And, my dad kind of fell apart in college. And at that point, I think there was enough going on that I sort of hit a bottom and went, what am I doing? How much of this is my choice? And how do I make a different choice? I remember asking a question. I was in a psychology class, and my psychology professor was talking about drunk dancing. Yeah, people dance drunk who don't typically dance sober. And I asked him a question. I said, but theoretically, if you can dance drunk, your muscles do the same thing when you're sober, right? And he went,
right.
Yeah, it's just that people are inhibited or people don't believe they can do it when they're sober. They need something to make them brave. And I thought to myself, well, if that's the case, if you really can do it either way, then why do we choose to do it drunk? Why do we choose to do anything through anger or through aggression? Or why don't we make a different choice? Then really isn't life about choice? I choose to know how to dance sober instead of just choosing to believe I can only dance drunk. That was a really important moment, and it's such a small, inconsequential moment, but that really sparked me into thinking, oh, maybe all that's going on for me is a choice. Not that anyone ever chooses to be date raped or anything like that. Don't get me wrong. But you do choose how you process things, Mm-hmm. You can choose to wallow or help yourself. You can choose to learn or to stay stagnant. Those things are choices. That's what I mean, a broader choice. Bad things happen all the time. Every day you could get angry at somebody in traffic, or you could go, you know what, maybe that guy's having a rough day. Maybe I'm going to process this a different way. Does that answer your question? I don't know.
Yeah, I've had, oh my God, just an insane journey.
Have you?
Yeah, pretty insane.
Well, tell me about it. I don't know your journey.
Okay, get ready. This is just insane. So yeah, I grew up in San Mateo, California, in the Bay Area, and my dad is an alcoholic. He's not like a mean drunk or anything. He's always been a happy drunk. And my mom, she's got a lot of mental issues passed on down to her from her mother. She never drank when I was growing up, but just a few years ago she started doing it a little bit, and she's finally starting to get it under control now and stuff. And I grew up with my parents. My grandmother from my mom lived in the house. My grandmother, she would live with us for 2 years, then go live on her own, and then come back again. Especially after she had something health-wise happen to her, like a heart attack or something. Mm-hmm. She would come back and everything. And my older brother, who's from a different father, he's 9 years older than me, and I was in special ed in school because I have Asperger's syndrome, and I have this rare growth disease called Simpson-Galabi syndrome, where I'm a lot bigger than I'm supposed to be. When I was 5, I looked like I was 10.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I was bullied an awful lot in school, and I've never been good at having a huge group of friends for a long period of time, only just, friends here and there. I spent my whole childhood in front of the TV watching movies and watching stand-up comedy and wanting to do all that stuff. And I did all that. I wrote screenplays. I was in my room all the time. I rarely ever went to a friend's house, just once in a while, but just never all the time. And I just, my grandmother's Italian, so she fed me a lot. She was a really good cook. I was overweight early on, and I spent a lot of time at the doctors because nobody knew anything about Simpson-Galabi syndrome back then in the 90s. They didn't know, if I was going to have a short lifespan or anything, so I was always going to the doctors and all that stuff. By middle school, I missed a lot of school because I was being bullied more than I ever had in elementary school. I mean, I thought elementary school was bad. Middle school was worse because hormones are starting to come in and just, a lot of kids are developing cockiness about them. It was just pretty bad. So my dad, when my mom wasn't home, he kept me home a lot, and I was just addicted to television.
That does sound pretty rough. Bullying is so bad. It's just, I was bullied too, probably not even kind of close to the extent it sounds like you were bullied. But I did have a stint in third grade where these 3 boys would follow me home from school and throw persimmons at me and call me hillbilly because I had an accent. And I was in Georgia. You would think that they would expect somebody to have an accent. But, boy, they were terrible. They used to hit me in the face with a soccer ball during PE, and I'd tell the teacher, and the teacher would tell me to handle it myself. And I'm like, well, clearly I can't handle it myself, which is why I'm talking to you. But it's such a terrible thing to have to go through as a child and to not be supported. I don't know how old you are. I'm 48. So back in those days, I don't think teachers really got involved with bullying like they are required to today. And they really did leave you to your own devices, which is terrible, Not that a parent or a teacher should intervene for everything. Some kids should work things out themselves, but there's a certain point where that's not going to happen. There needs to be some intervention. Did any intervention happen for you at school?
I mean, we reported the bullies and shit, and, occasionally they would stop. Otherwise, it would just escalate and make things worse, I mean, my brother, when he was in school, he got the worst of bullying. He got stuffed into a garbage can and broke his arm.
Oh, God. Why were they bullying him?
You know what? I can only assume because, I'm 9 years younger. I didn't go to school with him, but, I can just assume it was because he has a chip on his shoulder and he's very cocky.
That's terrible. Be shoved in a trash can?
Yeah.
Oh. That's really bad. Oh.
Yep.
How heartbreaking.
Yeah, but I never had a teacher say, deal with it yourself or anything. I had some pretty good teachers who looked out for me and all that. But yeah, I mean the bullying was pretty bad, and I got a little bit of it in high school, but it was mostly just talking shit to my face or behind my back type of stuff, but never anything that physical.
Right. Well, that's good. As long as they, not as long as they weren't physical. It's bad enough when someone's talking bad to you. That's mental abuse. It's really bad. I'm sorry you had to go through that. And, the thing about bullies is they feel weak and they feel small, and that's how they feel powerful, is that they pick on someone they believe is weaker or smaller than them, and usually the person being bullied is far stronger than the person bullying. Do you feel that it affects you today?
Definitely. It definitely does.
How does it affect you today?
Well, as I talk more about my journey, you'll get this, but I have pretty bad post-traumatic stress disorder.
You do?
Yeah.
From the bullying?
From the bullying and my car accident that I'm going to get to in a bit. But definitely, it has affected me because it's just I'm a guy who, given the right circumstances of what's familiar to me, I can take things pretty personally when somebody makes a joke at my expense. And being somebody who wants to be a comedian, that a lot of other comedians are like, oh come on, it's just a joke, and stuff like that. And I'm like, yeah, maybe so, but just it just takes me back to, I remember hearing stuff like that when I was a kid,
Yeah, it's a trigger.
Yeah, it's a trigger.
It's a trigger. So what happened with your car accident?
Well, starting in 2011, I started drinking pretty badly. I I worked at a bar starting in 2007, and by 2011 I was drinking pretty badly, and there was a lot of stuff going on at home, a lot of terrible shit that was going on in my life. But I mainly started drinking because I had a reputation that I didn't like for being sober and working in the bar business, and so I started drinking. And then by the time I became homeless for a while, starting at the end of 2013, and so I started drinking hard alcohol big time. And my best friend from childhood died in a car accident the week before Thanksgiving in 2014, and I started hitting the hard alcohol just really, really bad. And in January of 2015, it's 4 years this past Monday. It happened on January 21st, 2015. Me and this guy who I thought was my friend, we were coming back from San Francisco drinking, and he fell asleep at the wheel. I fell asleep in the passenger seat already, I guess. I don't remember a lot of this stuff. This is just what apparently happened after the fact when, police and witnesses saw stuff. We ended up in the middle of the road. We got out okay, and then at some point a car collided with ours, and the impact hit us. I got the worst of the injuries. I broke my leg in 7 places.
Oh, my goodness.
I fractured my hand. I lost a couple teeth. I crushed my sternum. I had a mild heart attack. And I was in a coma for 30 days.
Good grief.
Yeah.
That's terrible. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
So how'd you come back from that?
I woke up on my mom's birthday. And I don't know how I came back from that. It's just, I was meant to still be alive and pursue my dream.
Yeah. Sounds like you had more work to do.
Yes.
More work to do.
Yes.
Wow. Do you still have any residual health problems from that?
Yes, I had my gallbladder out about 9 months after I got out of the hospital, and when I eat, anything super greasy, it's just I don't feel so good afterwards. So I have to avoid eating copious amounts of grease, and certain things that that's just certain things I eat just don't agree with me anymore. And I got lots of arthritis in my leg, as I should. And other than that, no, I mean everything's fine. I mean, I'm just lucky to be alive. I've had a struggle with weight all my life, as I said, and I gained a lot of weight back from the depression, because when I had my accident, I weighed 350 and I woke up at 190. And
oh, wow.
I was back to 350 again. I've lost 10 pounds. I've been on this diet for a month now, and it's going great. And I don't want to have another heart attack, so I got to eliminate the depression and get back, get my health in check again, because I don't want to die.
Are you having depression now?
Oh yeah, I mean, I have days where I'm just feeling like shit and I can't deal with anything, and I can't drink anymore, because if I drink, my liver will bleed. I have a damaged liver from the whole thing. So, I drink, soda that has caffeine with it, and that makes me happy. I shouldn't drink any soda, but I do and stuff. And on this diet, I've cut back drastically. Occasionally I'll have like a Diet Pepsi or something.
I mean, there's nothing better than a Coca-Cola, I have to tell you.
Yeah.
Nothing better on the planet. One of my favorite things is a Coca-Cola.
Oh, the best.
I hear you. It would be really hard to stop entirely having any fun at all to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
That would be really hard. Well, what do you do when you're feeling depressed? Is there anything that you can do to help yourself feel better, or is it just something you have to wait through?
Oh, I did a lot of, during my depression the last few years, I mean, obviously I've eaten a lot and gained the weight, but since I started this diet, if I feel depressed for some reason, I just cry, and it seems to make me feel better.
Yes, it's like releasing a valve, right?
Yeah.
Crying is so healthy. One of my daughters is having a really hard time crying right now. So
Right.
when we watch a movie that everybody's crying, she will just refuse. She'll make fun of the movie. She'll do anything she can to not cry. And I keep saying to her, crying's part of being human. There's nothing wrong with crying. Now, if you're crying for no reason on a constant basis, you may need to go see somebody about that. But if you're watching a sad movie and you're moved, crying is completely normal. I guess it's a very vulnerable place, and most people just want to avoid that kind of painful feeling. But it's very cathartic. It's very healthy. It's very healing to cry. I think that's a great thing to do if you're feeling depressed, is to have a good cry out.
Absolutely.
More people should do that.
Yeah. Oh my God.
There wouldn't be so much road rage if we just had a good cry every Friday, 3:00. Everybody cries. That might be a good plan. What do you think?
Oh, I think the whole world needs to cry, especially right now, with what's going on in the world with politics and stuff.
Yes, it is a very sad time in some respects, for sure. It's a crazy time.
Yeah.
So you do this podcast, right?
Yes.
What else do you do?
Okay, well, right now, so like I mentioned, I was homeless. My mom and I were both homeless for a few years. And long story short, we moved up here to Redding, California because my godparents are up here and the cost of living is a little cheaper. Not too cheap, but it's cheaper. And my mom had gotten a job up here, and so I came up here to help her pay the rent. Because I was living in a home for people with disabilities. Oh my God, that's a whole nother podcast. There's lots of fucked up shit that go on in group homes for people with disabilities. And one of the homes I lived in just got busted for human trafficking. It's so bad.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't even imagine what goes on in facilities like that. You're hopeful people are integrous and have, the right motivation for working in a care facility. And it's so disheartening to find out that that's not the case, that people are not good people sometimes. I'm sure not all facilities are that way, but, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I interviewed an actress about a year ago who she got out of acting for 25 years and became a social worker for disabled kids, and she worked in a group home, and she saw a lot of that stuff. Actually, yeah, it was for kids, and I told her, I was in there as an adult, and she was like, oh my God, that stuff happens in adult too, and I'm like, yeah, and she's like, oh my God, that is so terrible, and I just messaged her not too long ago and told her what happened, and she's like, oh, we got to do another podcast where we talk about it, and I said, yes, we will.
Oh my goodness. That will be an interesting podcast for sure.
Yeah.
It'll be crazy.
So back to what I was saying, yeah. So I came down here to Redding, I collect disability, and I just do this podcast. I go to L.A. and San Francisco quite a bit, and I go to conventions, comic book conventions and horror conventions, because that's what I'm into, and I meet celebrities, and I network with them, and I get them on the podcast and stuff, and it's just gone just tremendously well, because I'm waiting. I've been trying to move to LA since I was 18, and it might actually happen this year. And so I'm just, marking time here and helping my mom pay the rent, and she's trying to retire and stuff. So right now I'm just doing that. But before the accident, I worked in retail and security, and I did stand-up comedy only as a hobby. And since my accident, I've just pursued show business. Within a month of my recovery, I was back on stage performing again.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
That's really amazing. That's some will right there. That's great.
Yeah.
Really great. Well, maybe you'll get to move to LA. That would be very exciting.
Yeah, God, it would. I'm going to be there in April for a horror convention. I'm going to go over to the Comedy Store and see some friends of mine who work there.
So, when I was younger, I loved horror movies.
Right.
But they are so scary now, I can't watch them. I can't do it.
Oh.
It scares me too bad. Like, the last horror movie I watched was The Ring.
Uh-huh.
And I did not sleep for months. And I was like, okay, I think I've outgrown horror. I don't think I can do it anymore. I think I'm too old. My brain, I literally could not sleep forever, for months and months after I saw that movie. So you really love horror? You watch like modern horror?
Yeah, well, it's funny. I've only seen a handful of horror films in the last few years that I consider great. I mean, I'm with you 100% on that. Today's horror, it doesn't have any joy to it. It used to have so much joy. You used to have, villains like Freddy Krueger and Chucky, and they would be funny and say one-liners and stuff. Just horror today doesn't have that kind of joy no more. And I wrote a screenplay not too long ago that I'm trying to sell, that I'm trying to get people involved in. It's like a homage to Nightmare on Elm Street, and it's got a villain kind of like Freddy in it, because I just think that kind of horror needs to come back.
That kind of horror, you're right. It was pretty dynamic in that there was humor and there were other things in it. I mean, even Scream was, more comedy than horror, but it was still a scary movie. I was still scared in Scream.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess I can't really speak to it, really, because The Ring is literally the last scary movie I saw. I just can't do it. It just scared me too bad. But I used to love, Friday the 13th and obviously Nightmare on Elm Street and all those movies. I couldn't wait to see them. Now I'm just a big, fat chicken. I'm a total chicken, and I'm comfortable in my chickenness because that girl from The Ring just really did me in. She did me in. And it didn't help probably that I was sitting next to a guy who screamed like a girl through the whole movie and kept grabbing me. So I was getting scared from what I was watching, and he was scaring me to death. He kept going, ah, and grabbing me. And I was like, oh, my God. I thought, I don't know, it was a little too real.
Yeah.
Well, it's cool that you're into something like that. I think so few people, or maybe not few people, maybe a lot of people are really into, I guess a lot of people are into horror and into like Comic-Con stuff, right? It's a really huge industry now.
It's become bigger. Yeah, it's funny. I didn't start going to conventions till, after my accident 3 years ago because I wasn't aware of the convention culture yet. I knew conventions existed. I wanted to go to some when I was a kid, but my parents wouldn't take me because they weren't into horror. My mom's not into horror, but she'll go with me to a convention, especially if there's a celebrity there, she likes, that has done other things, But I wasn't aware of the culture until 3 years ago. And the first, 6 months that I was back on stage doing stand-up, I was having fun, but I was like, God, I'm having fun, but I'm a little bored. I want to do something else. And then, I went to a bunch of cons, and I was like, you know what, I should get back into screenwriting because I quit doing that for a while. And I'm back doing it again.
That's great. So what do you write? Do you write horror films?
Horror, science fiction, comedy, which was my main focus when I was younger and stuff. I remember the first script I ever wrote when I was 12 years old because my mom got me a digital typewriter. I wrote a porno version of Blade Runner.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I wish I still had that. It was so bad, I threw it away.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
It'd be cool to go back and read it now, though. You think, that was 12? That was pretty badass. I'm 12 years old that you wrote a script.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing. What comedies do you like?
Oh, my God. I mean, I grew up watching movies like Animal House. My dad and I used to watch that when my mom wasn't home when I was like 4 years old.
What a great movie that is, right?
Yeah. We were watching all the R-rated shit when I was like starting at like 4. I mean, we had a tape that had 48 Hours and Eddie Murphy Delirious on it. We used to watch those.
Oh, I loved Eddie Murphy Delirious too. I listened to that. I had a cassette tape, and I listened to it so much that it broke. Cassette that smelled like ribbon broke, and we couldn't play it anymore. My best friend and I would listen to it every day. I think at the time, I was either in 7th or 8th grade, and I think that she and I could quote the entire cassette tape, both sides, the whole act.
Oh.
I loved that act. And now I just watched it recently, and I thought, this would not get played today.
No.
I mean, today's standards That special would never make it on the air today.
No. And you know what? With all the political correctness going on and shit, someone ought to say to them, you know what? Take every special that came out in the 80s and how about just burn it? But of course they don't want to do that because it makes money.
Right. Yes. It's a strange time we're in now. Very strange time. Not a lot of sense of humor flying around. There's a lot of seriousness. Not a lot of sense of humor. Not a lot of compassion or understanding or forgiveness or grace or gratitude. It's just all so rigid, and rigidity breaks. If you're fluid, you don't break. But rigidity breaks quite easily, and so I'm interested to see what we transition into as a society from this rigid place we're in now.
Yeah. Oh my God. I just don't know what's going to happen, where we're going to go, and my friend I was just talking to on the podcast before we were talking about that for the whole hour about about life and what's going to happen next and stuff. It's insane. This is. I never thought I would ever see something like this in my lifetime,
Yeah, it's crazy. I can't believe the government's still shut down. It's just crazy. It's just a weird time. You have to wonder what it means. What does it mean? Where are we going? What does this mean? All big societies fall, and there's part of me, Rome took forever to fall, but it finally did. And there's part of me that wonders, is this the beginning of our fall? I don't know. It's kind of a scary thing to contemplate. But, yeah, it's going to be interesting 20 years from now to see where we are and look back on this moment in history.
Yeah,
it's going to be crazy. So,
if anything, it's made people reevaluate themselves and their their actions.
I think it has some people, and I think some people it's made them more narrow. I think it's done the opposite for some people because, I remember my parents when in the 70s were, I guess maybe as you get older you get more rigid, but they were much more accepting as a society than today, and not of like bad behavior or anything like that. That's not what I mean. Just a difference of opinion was not an offense. You know what I mean? Like, you don't like pizza with corn on it? You can't come in my house anymore. Like that seems to be kind of where we are today. And I don't remember it ever being that way before the past few years, where we can have a difference of opinion and still enjoy each other's company and not feel like, okay, I don't agree with you on this one platform, so I can't spend time with you because I can't associate with trash. I feel like that's what we've come to. And I know for sure the country that we live in was not built that way. The people who built the Constitution of the United States did not sit there and have every single thing in agreement. They found a way to live with each other in as much harmony as possible with their differences of opinion and beliefs. And I feel like now you're either on my team or you're my enemy. And there's no middle. And if you're my enemy, I can't spend any time with you. And I just think what a disservice you do to your own self to not be able to open up and hear someone else's point of view. And at the end of the day say, I respect that you are different than me and that we both put our pants on the same way. Obviously it's not great to be a neo-Nazi or, anti-Semitic or all of that. But what I'm saying applies to a lot of other parts of our life and a lot of other people that aren't any of those things but still don't believe the same thing we do and are just rejected. It's really not very community-like.
Yeah.
It's not very melting pot.
Yeah.
It's very kind of you're either in the pot or out. And I don't know. I just think that's really unhealthy. Good or bad, right or wrong, I don't know. It just feels to me very unhealthy that then you get stuck in your one lane and you can't get out of your one lane in your own brain. Like if I had stayed in my one lane, I never would have gotten better as a human being. I never would have improved. I never would have read books that made me think, that made me argue with to anybody that has an opinion different than yours, your opinion just kind of stays the same. There's no growth in that. There's no opening in that. That's just all very shut. And I just think that's not healthy. I don't know, right or wrong, it's just not healthy, in my opinion.
Yeah.
As you asked me about my journey, that's what life is.
Mm-hmm.
How can you take a journey if you never leave your own street?
Right.
You can't. You have to sometimes go into some land where you're like, oh, hold on, I think Freddy Krueger lives here. How do I get out of here?
Yeah.
But if you don't ever go there, how is it a journey? I don't know. Half the shit that I lived through, I wouldn't want anyone to repeat, ever. But at the same time, if I can find the glass half full in all of those events, even the terrible ones like the date rape, I learned so much about myself after that date rape, because I learned how bad I could feel about myself when it wasn't even like self-imposed, how someone else made me feel so bad about myself. And instead of staying in that feeling so bad, I could allow that to help me change myself. And if you just don't ever look at those bad things that happen, or you don't ever wish for bad things to happen, but bad things happen in life. They just happen. You had a car accident. You
Right.
would never want that to happen. Guess what? It happens all the time.
Yeah.
So you have to figure out how to turn that into a positive and how to make that a learning experience, and in a certain way, a gift, where you go, what's the gift in this tragedy? There were lots of gifts in my parents' divorce and my mom having mental illness. There's lots of gifts, and there's lots of piles of shit, too.
Mm-hmm.
But what you focus on grows. You're going to focus on the pile of shit, or are you going to focus on the gift? Because truly, what you focus on in life grows. So, I don't know. I feel like people believe they're on these big journeys in life when they're really just walking down their own street.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're not going down a street that's scary to see if they can figure out anything from that scary street to bring back to their own street. I don't know. Is that too esoteric?
No.
Too out there?
No, it's wonderful. Let me tell you, over here in Reading, in this apartment complex I live in, there's a church/cult nearby, and it's a college, and there's all these 18 to 22-year-old millennials living in this complex who go to this church and go to their college, and it's complete bullshit. They're on YouTube where people are like, exposing them and stuff. I mean, it's terrible, right? And I go to the swimming pool and the hot tub here, and I meet these 18 to 22-year-olds, right? And they're just feeding me this religious, almost devil worshipping like bullshit. I mean, they claim to be Christians, but it's just bullshit. And I don't tell them outright that it's bullshit, but I kind of hint at it, right? And I tell them about my accident, and they look at me like I'm a crazy person when I tell them what happened to me. And I'm just like, oh my God, you claim to be religious and believe, God has a plan for everyone, and God had a plan for me, but you think that I'm a crazy person. You're just the way you're looking at me,
Yeah.
It's weird shit going on.
It is very narrow.
Yeah.
It's really narrow. I don't like the narrow. I like broad. And acceptance requires that you be broad. And, there's just not a lot of broadness walking around today. It's a lot of narrow, which is a shame for the narrow, because then they lose out on so much by not opening up and listening to someone's story and trying to be compassionate and accepting of who the person is, and meeting someone where they are. People are limited. And, for me to have expected my rural Georgia family to understand things that I understand is crazy, because they have no experience of what I've had. So for me to go home and go, well, you just don't understand A, B, or C, would be extremely unfair. uncaring and unloving. Instead of saying, I understand, I lived here too. I know what this small town is like, and there's beautiful things about that. And there's no possible way you could know what Rome, Italy looks like or be affected by traveling there because you've never been there. So why would I expect you to understand something about Rome that you would never know? You know, I think that happens a lot where people think everybody should be at my experience level. And whoever my is, you know, your college people at Reading, you should be at their place because everything's filtered through your own perspective without allowing that someone else has a very different experience of life, and good or bad, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's just very different, and that is beautiful that we all have these differences. Not everything is, you know, just because I don't recognize it, it's bad, you know, or I have no compassion for it. We all deserve compassion.
Mm-hmm.
Every person on this planet, you know, if you are a religious person and you believe in God, then God made every single person in his image. That's what the Bible said. So then if that's true, then you have to accept yourself as who you are, and you have to accept other people as who they are.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you are religious and you believe in the Bible, that's what the Bible said. So I find it very interesting, people who are very religious who don't abide by certain things like that. You know, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Pretty simple.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
and most of the time these people are religious. I'm like, I'm not religious at all, but I try to live by that. You know? It's just kind of good practice, right?
Right. Wait, would you agree that all this crap started when 9/11 happened?
That's a really interesting question. I don't think it has to do with 9/11. I think it has to do with social media.
Yeah.
I think it has to do with people being allowed to have a voice without any evidence or education to back that voice. I think it started there. I think people got a platform that was never existed before. And you can stand on your mountain and pontificate your beliefs, and it can be heard by millions for some people, but it doesn't require any kind of like street cred. You don't have to, you're not the deacon in the church now. You know, in the past, before social media, if anybody stood up with a platform, it came from an educated place usually. You know, it was your professor, it was the captain of your football team, it was someone like that. And I think this platform gave voice to many, many people who just had a voice, but not necessarily anything to back it. That sounds kind of terrible now that I say it out loud, but I really do think that is what happened, is I think everybody suddenly found themselves to be quite important. And the truth of the matter is, not very many people are really that important.
Right.
So we're important to ourselves, and we are important, obviously. But I don't feel like I have the right to stand up and talk about certain subjects that people feel like they have the right to stand up and talk about, because I'm not educated in that. I'm not an expert in that. And in my opinion, it would be reckless for me to have any kind of opinion on something I don't have some kind of knowledge or education about. That would be very reckless. And I think a lot of people recklessly get on a soapbox and talk about things they don't know anything about. And then people start following them. Does that sound like Donald Trump?
Oh, yeah. Sounds like him. It sounds like, you know, all these self-proclaimed feminists out there.
Some of them are absolutely that, where you have you have a big voice.
Mm-hmm.
But what's behind the voice? And sometimes what they put behind the voice is very narrow again, very chosen, and not a whole picture. And I go, well, what about this whole other section you're leaving out? And, you know, when the Me Too movement started and all these young ladies were coming out about the inappropriate date with Aziz Ansari, and I was like, you agreed to be there. You never said, I'm leaving. He didn't force you to stay there. So you're kind of offending me, who had something taken from her by force in a violent manner. You're making yourself equal to me, where you said, no, I want to stop, but I'm not leaving, and I'm going to start again. And no, I want to stop, but I'm not leaving, and I'm going to start again. And now later you're proclaiming you've been victimized. That's kind of offensive to me.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Exactly.
People not that she wasn't, I think that she believes she's been victimized. But I think if you put her against people who really have been violated violently, it's a very different conversation. So for someone like me who's had that happen, to stand up and say, hey, #MeToo is very different. I don't know. And I'm sure feminists will hate that point of view that I just presented. But
who cares?
It is really hard as someone who's had something violently done to them like that to hear someone say, well, I was on a date, we were fooling around, I didn't like it, I stopped, but then I started again.
Yeah.
And then we were fooling around and it happened and I stopped, and then I started it again, and then have them come up a victim. I think that's a poor choice that you regret, which is very different than someone who is like violently victimized. So, I don't know, that leveling out of that playing field just hasn't set well with me. Some of these women who are really, really #MeToo'd are the people who should be talking.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. And stuff like that has just been driving me crazy. You know, I supported the Me Too movement for the first couple of months, and then once I saw shit like that happening, like with Aziz and like with other people, I was just like, oh my God, this is just mind control. This is just Hollywood, you know, career resurrection and fucking mind control is what it is.
Some of it was necessary.
Yeah.
But some of it I just kept thinking, this is important. And if this is really important, you should choose wisely who's talking about this, what to make an issue, and where they're coming from with that issue. You should choose very wisely, because what happened for you happens, I think, for a lot of people. They were like, okay, here's another one, and here's another one, and really, that's what you're going to talk about? And that's unfortunate. It's like it got saturated. Instead of carefully saying, right, here are the people that should be saying, here are the people who have something to say. And when you really listen to those people who have something to say, it does create change in a different way than everybody saying the same thing at the same time. You know, Martin Luther King spoke very poignantly and with many voices behind him, but his singular voice was so pointed and so very clear that everybody got behind that one voice. Instead of, I think in this movement, I feel like there are so many voices that it's overwhelming, or you stop listening, or it's too noisy, or, you know what I mean?
Right.
I just don't think it was well orchestrated. And that's really unfortunate that I feel that way, because I'm a #MeTooer. I mean, that happened to me.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. My reaction to that movement is probably not well liked, but that is my reaction. Where I went, you're talking about a date you could have left? Go fuck yourself, lady. I couldn't leave. I had no choice.
Yeah.
What you're talking about is a bunch of bullshit. Is you acting badly on a date and now regretting it. And now this guy is at the top of his game, and you're jumping on this bandwagon, and I don't get it. I don't get any of that. You weren't victimized. You stayed there of your own free will. And that is insulting to me.
Yeah, I nearly got sexually assaulted in the first group home I lived in, the one that got busted. Yeah. And I'm until they got busted, I just felt so bad by it. I got haunted by it, but then once they got busted, I got closure from it. And I'll tell you, those first 4 or 5 months that the Me Too movement was happening, there was a lot of female guests on this podcast coming on, and there was a lot of them I didn't even have to ask. There was a lot of them telling me their personal Me Too experiences, and they didn't even know me, and yet they felt comfortable telling me just, like I would ask them about a certain movie role, and they would tell me the honest truth about what happened behind the scenes, about getting, their ass groped or something by somebody. And I felt so good that they trusted me and they told me about it.
Sure.
It was great. But yeah, in fact, there was one actress, Tawny McClure. She told me her story, and I've gotten, I don't know, maybe close to 2,000 views on that one episode alone.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, see, it is alarming how many people do have an actual story. That is alarming. I only know one other person that has a story like mine.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you start opening up about it, that part of the movement on like the grassroots level, I think was really important, where people started just talking about things that had happened to them. That part I think was really great. I think that's more similar to what happened maybe with Martin Luther King Jr. is that then all of a sudden everybody's like, hey, that happened to me too, and I don't like that either, and we need to change that from like the mass movement. But yeah, there's a lot of voices going on in that movement. Maybe not all of them should have been going on.
Yeah.
But I hate to do this, but I have like 5 more minutes, and then I have to go pick up my daughter from school.
Okay.
So how do we wrap it up?
I just a little while ago I got a notification about your podcast today with Bert. I'm going to watch it after we're done here.
Yep, it's my 1-year anniversary today.
Really?
Yep, I started this podcast 1 year ago today. Wife of the Party is 1 year old today.
Wow, that's amazing. And yeah, it seems like you're getting a huge following and lots of positive feedback from it.
I have really enjoyed it so much, and I'm really grateful that people email me and tell me that it's helped them. And my intention when I started the podcast was to have fun and to learn something. And I think I've learned a lot. I feel like if I'm learning something, then whoever's listening is probably learning something too. So I don't have all the answers in life, for sure. And I probably won't have them when I die. So life in this journey is about learning and growing. And my podcast I've learned so much, and I've grown a lot. It's been really a blessing and a pleasure. And I'm so happy for the people who email me and for everybody who listens and for all my friends who just keep showing up to do it with me. We have so much fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's just great. I mean, just the things that you learn, depending on what the subject is and stuff. I love it. A couple weeks ago when you had Joy and her friend Emma on.
Oh my goodness, what a powerful podcast that was.
Yeah.
I had no idea what we were going to talk about. Most of the time, I don't. Sometimes I'll do some research, like I just did one about breast cancer that hasn't come out yet, and I did a little research on breast cancer.
Yeah.
But most of the time, I don't really prepare anything. I just sit down and see where the conversation takes us, or I may have, today we're going to talk about Cheetos, and go from there. But wow, what a powerful podcast that was. Those women are impressive. They are impressive human beings. Joy, could she have more interests and be more proficient in them? I mean, what an impressive person. And Emily is so brave and really daring and such a sweetheart. I loved getting to know them and talking to them, and I was so surprised at where that podcast went. You just never know.
Yeah, Joy was a great interview on here. We laughed and had a good time, and she's an absolute female version of the Jewish word mensch.
I think you're right. I think she is a mensch. She's great. She really is great. I listened to that podcast, to yours with
Oh, did you like it?
I did, of course. Yes.
Oh, thank you.
You do a very good job.
Thanks. I try.
You do. You do a great job.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, it's funny. I read the comments of your podcast, and all the women are saying, "Oh, this is so great. This is so inspiring," and all the men are saying, "LeeAnn has nice feet."
I know. There's this one guy that's obsessed with feet. He keeps talking about our feet. Nice feet. Nice feet. It's really kind of strange. I get a lot of emails from men too. They don't leave comments as much. Maybe they want to be private, but they email me and are like, "I'm so glad for this I can hear things from, like, my wife's perspective. I know one guy emailed me who was like, my wife has been saying what you said on your podcast for years, and I never heard it. But when I heard you and your friends talking about it, I went, oh, my God, my wife has been telling me that for years. I was like, isn't that fascinating? We're so emotionally invested in our partner. Sometimes it is hard to hear something, especially something you don't want to hear.
Yeah.
You know, I don't remember what the topic was, but I remember thinking, oh, this is a vulnerable place in their relationship, and to hear it not in their relationship, and for him to be able to hear it and then say, oh, wait a minute, my wife's been saying that, that can be transformative, you know, if you can go back to your wife and go, I finally hear you. That's amazing. So to me, that was one of my favorite comments, because I thought, what a great guy to be able to do that, and to say, I finally heard you. You know, most of the time it doesn't matter when you're heard. It's just that you're heard.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're eventually heard, it can be so powerful. So
yeah.
I'm really proud of my little podcast, my little hobby podcast that we deficit fund with the Bertcast. But that's okay. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, I love it when you and Bert do one, because you two don't talk like a typical married couple. You two talk more like two old friends who know each other very well.
Well, I think that's how marriage is supposed to be.
Yeah.
You know, all that romance stuff is really great, but at the end of the day, especially when you have kids, it's like war. It's like you're in the trenches. And if you're not really good friends with the person that you're in the trenches with, I would imagine it would be very hard. Because if I didn't care for him like I care for my girlfriend, sort of, in a different way, obviously, but if I didn't care for him at that kind of base level,
Mm-hmm.
I'd be really resentful and angry, I think, about, you know, what I'm doing and what he's not doing. But that's not really how either of us have ever approached our marriage. Our marriage is very much about caring for each other. And, you know, all the romance and stuff is great, but it's only a certain percentage of a marriage anyway. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
how many times can a guy bring you flowers, really? You know, but he can show up every day and be kind and caring and be fun at board games and, you know, goofy and great cook, and all those things really are what it's about. You know, how we spend time together is really what it's about. We really enjoy each other's company, and I think we have always really enjoyed each other's company, and I think that's what makes it a good marriage, is that you enjoy each other's company. You know, if you think, who do I want to hang out with?
Yeah.
It shouldn't be your neighbor. It should be your husband. You know?
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't know. He's a pretty good fella. I think I'll keep him.
Yeah. He's a funny guy, too. I saw his special.
He is funny. He's a funny guy.
Yeah.
Well, Tommy, I have to go. I have to go get my kids.
Yes. LeeAnn, thank you so much. I'd love to do this again if you're down.
Yeah, we can do it again. No problem. Thank you for having me. It was really fun talking to you. I appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. You are the very definition of Southern hospitality.
Oh, that's so sweet. Well, thank you very much. That means a lot to me. Thank you.
My pleasure. And you have yourself a great day.
I will, and you do the same. We'll talk again soon, okay?
Okay.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, there you have it. LeeAnn Kreischer. Ain't she a sweetheart? She is, like I said, the very definition of Southern hospitality. I will say that again. You are so awesome, and you are blessed. You've had an amazing journey, and I'm glad you loved hearing about my journey too, and we will talk again more about it. If you like this video, everyone, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Add me as a friend on Facebook. Join my Tommy Kovac comedian page on Facebook. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram and all that fun stuff. Well, that's all the time we have this week on Splat from the Past. Until next time, this is Tommy Throwback Kovac saying, there's no shame in living in the past, because the present sucks. Later, dudes.